finals here for the Banshee tournament. There is a German stream, by the way, if none of you have gone to the Team Liquid sidebar. He is casting in German with a co-caster, although I don't know who. Apparently a bit of a older school commentator, but he asked, and I was like, yeah, okay, fine. I'm generally very, like, you know, wary of anyone else casting this tournament. You know, regardless if it's a, well, I wouldn't allow any English other, well, I might. It depends. But anyways, I'm wary in general of having other people cast this, right? You don't know how cool they're going to be on the whole thing. You don't know how much they're just going to be like, ah, it's just a thing I want to do because I see it up on the Team Liquid sidebar. And you don't know if they have any actual good production, right? That's the kind of the same problem with trying to have any new co-commentators, is that, you know, what if their mic is poopy and then they just wanted to get on stream to say that you're shit and then they log off, right? So it's scary, but I figured he was cool enough, and so far it seems like he's been cool, got no complaints. But if you are German and would like to hear German coverage, then you can go over there. I don't believe anyone else is streaming their own matches, so this is the only place, I guess, to see it. Now that Poison is done, but Poison might be streaming still, so if you want to go check her out, give her a thumbs up on the good victories and the good losses as well, then go ahead. We are into the first semifinal. In the top right, as the blue Zerg, she is Aflor, and she is going for an early pool. On the bottom left, as the red Zerg, she is QB, going for a regular timed hatch gas pool opener. Now, QB is one of the constant contenders to Telia whenever she's capable of participating in these tournaments. Occasionally it's a 3-0. I think it's done this weird thing where it's been a 3-0, 3-2, and then it was a 3-1, I believe, 3 weeks ago, the last Banshee tournament. And then she won the tournament that Telia was unable to play in last time, so like number 5 or number 6, something like that. And she's kind of a favorite to win this one now that Telia is not here either. But Eflor, really looking to pile on the pressure, goes for just a simple non-gas pool opening with the hatchery being taken. Eventually QB will see this with her own Overlord, but initially it will be like a little hard. It's like, okay, the timing, you know, what was it exactly on the Lings? Is it going to have that speed or isn't it? Generally you want to take the worst case scenario into account, you know, be like, oh shit, it's a Baneling bust, and go for a Spine Crawler. But if it's not, then you did just waste drones and drone mining time as well, where you really want to do this instead, which is exactly what she's doing. Pull the drones, save the hatchery, and then get back to mining at the natural. Unfortunately, the drones were a little late on the pool. Maybe she was waiting to see the hatchery with the Overlord to confirm. That seems like that might have been the timing. Or maybe she simply mistimed the hatchery going down, but Eflor was well within her rights, basically, to go for the actual hatchery kill, because it's different. You know, if that hatchery has 500 health left and QB pulls the drones and you try and target fire it, you're probably not going to kill it with 10 Lings. But it was pretty damn low, and that was the correct call. Eflor even able to take the surround on the Lings, so QB in a very, very bad spot. Was going to at least have that speed boost. She was going to have speed, her opponent wasn't. She was going to have a Baneling nest, her opponent was going to be a little later to it with no gas. If she even got it at all, right? I mean, she was going to have a possible counterattack there to really change the way this game has gone. But by losing, of course, her hatchery, and then another hatchery, and then, you know, 2 drones, technically, right? And then all of her Lings, this isn't feeling so good for our red Zerg, but Elflor getting a little, whoa, way too overconfident for a third base going down. Yeah, it might not be scouted. Okay, it's gonna be scouted. So no, that just doesn't seem, well, it doesn't seem like a good idea. But it's only a bad idea if QB does anything about it. And while QB might have been thinking about the follow-up all-in, either her own, you know, to her opponent, or thinking that Elflor could possibly be doing a follow-up herself, neither one's actually happening. Elflor is just macroing, and QB has now invested into 5 more drones that maybe are going to throw off this timing that now she can't all in anymore effectively. I mean, it's a little tough to call because Elflor is just being so greedy about this. No speed on the way. Oh, went for the queen, knowing the Banelings could have finished at any second, so loses a big chunk of her own. And no wall off, no roach warren. Like, Elflor had a great opener, but her follow-up seems very suspicious. It's certainly nerve-wracking, and if she is if she manages to come out ahead, then she's gonna be way, way ahead, I think, right? But it would not surprise me that, you know, she dies a lot to follow up all in by her opponent, QB in this case, because she goes for such extreme greed. Maybe I'm not giving her enough credit. Maybe she just actually reads into this really, really, really well. I mean, QB was so much later, I think, than she really wanted to be or had to be to the attack, you know? She went from 17 drones up to 24. That's a lot in such an early stage as EVZ to put into drones and then do the attack that, while, you know, you're like, well, she has more economy to work off of. Like, yeah, but it's so much later. It's so much later. You're still only working off of 2 hatcheries larva production. Actually, for a time, she was only working off of 1 hatcheries larva, right? So you don't have the opportunity to just be like, oh, I have 3 hatcheries, boom, 60 lings. You really got to get the pressure going. You got to get the momentum on your side as soon as possible, and I just don't see that happening. Even though she's now, I guess, taking a couple of trades here and there, it just isn't really amounting to very much. Elflor was able to get away with the 3rd base. Even with those Banelings taking such an efficient hit, I'm not doing the caster voice where I was like, oh, those Banelings were amazing. Did they actually I don't think they actually mattered. I don't think they actually counted. And Elflor not just got away with the 3rd base, but a lot more drones, waited forever to get speed. Baneling Nest was also pretty late, even though it wasn't really used here. I mean, usually the follow-up to an attack like what Elflor did without the gas is to go for the wall-off with the Roach Warren into a slower 3rd base and Roaches. Now she's going to do that, but only as, you know, as just like the next step of ZVZ. She's just following along the pattern of ZVZ that you should, but with a very substantial lead. You got to consider how long she had so many more drones, right? So while it's getting a little more even as time goes on, now QB's only down by 12. That's obviously still not great. She's been behind for basically the entire game. Now those banding connections were pretty good. A lot of lings still coming in here, trying to snipe a couple of drones. Not necessarily worth it, but also not really that important again. Taking the 3rd base down, losing, you know, her own units. Elflor still comes out ahead by 6 army supply on her way to Roaches. I mean, +1's a little bit slower, but her speed's a lot faster. Deals with the attack to the 3rd base very, very easily. Some lings into the main base, but they're not going to go hide themselves. They actually just get taken out plain and simple. 7 drones go down for QB. I guess a ling or something had popped back in there and got another drone. But none go down for our blue Zerg, who just continues her lead. A little bit of supply block right now as they both get into Roaches. We are into that next phase of Zerg versus Zerg. But is QB really that good in general as EVZ to bring back such a deficit? She'd have to be really, really damn good. This should not kill the 3rd base, so you tell you that much. That seems ambitious. It did cause a couple Banelings to sacrifice themselves. Not an efficient trade there for QB. Quick check on the income graph to explain what I was talking about earlier. Maybe there was a time where the drones were pulled away, or Elflor had invested into that 3rd base and not, you know, wasn't actually mining too efficiently, but it very quickly changes, and then you see this huge bump in the economy. That's all directly translated right into more Roaches in this case. Tunnelling Claws and Burrow already on the way. Elflor not with an astounding army supply lead, but when you consider that it is the same exact type of units as your opponent, 40 army supply is actually kind of astounding. Like, doubling the army supply and then some is actually pretty damn good. But I was gonna bring up that probably in the next 2 minutes we'll see Elflor actually max out, where QB will continue to be struggling, and that will be an extremely impressive army supply difference. Well, I think this might just be the death push. Not waiting for anything in particular, not waiting for Tunneling Claws or +2 or something like that, but just going for it. And with the Overlord seeing the size of QB's army, I think Elflor is not taking any risks whatsoever in doing this. Also some decent Overlord coverage on the other parts of the map too. Actually really nice Overlord coverage so that if there was any units trying to force a weird base trade, she'd totally know about it. GG. Elflora got a really strong start. Okay, there's just no denying that. But then I think if, you know, if QB opens up the replay and watches that again, she's probably just gonna sit there and go like, who does that? Who does that follow-up? Because I was shocked by it. There wasn't a lot of intel that Elflora was getting to tell her, like, 100% I can get away with this, 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 and this. There's not really much telling if your opponent's not hiding 20 lings in the main base ready for speed, or hiding 2 banelings off to the side where your Overlord isn't ready to do the all-in. That's usually what we see, or there's certainly one of the options we see if you lose out to an early pool is just an immediate counter, right? But Elflora took the chance, and while there was continuous scouting, I know she was trying to send links forward and whatnot, it was a risk, and she was able to get away with it. So I think QB watched the replay, and she's like, well, you know, what the hell? I shouldn't have let you gotten away with that, but then also, you know, how was I supposed to suspect that you were going to do that? Seems like there might have also been a bit of confusion on the opponent's MMR. So Elflora is Diamond 2 on NA. That's the MMR that is shown here. But she plays in a couple of tournaments, it looks like. A lot of customs. A ton of customs. But it's probably Masters. She says she has a ton of lost games because of internet issues. So QB might have just simply been underestimating her opponent. And that does change a lot of the way that you, especially as a Zerg player, I think, drone and make army. So QB finally says lost and found. Thank you, Marshallini, for that Twitch Prime sub. This is only a best of 3, so that's shock and awe that QB probably just experienced with like, hey, I thought I was the better player. Really does cost her. You know, it could still be the case that QB's the better player and that, you know, it's just like, oh, okay, whatever. Throw that game away type deal. But even if she was technically, let's say like 200 MMR above Elflora when she thought she was 1,000 MMR above her, that's still not enough that, you know, people can't win games. And now you've taken away your one gimme game. So it's a little scary. Now, I should mention, as we're getting into game here, that the players remaining have all made some money, which is nice. And because of everyone's generosity, they made actually quite a bit of money. They've made, you know what? I'm not going to do the math. Never mind. They made 0.06% of $240. Which I guess isn't actually like, doesn't sound like a lot to people when someone does the math and it's like $24 or whatever. But considering that some tournaments don't pay out to 3rd and 4th, considering that this is a very short tournament, all things considered, and that initially there wasn't even a 3rd and 4th place prize payout, I think that's pretty damn good. Thank you to the Swamp 4 or Swampiv, something like that, for that Twitch Prime sub. Or Theswampiv. I'm gonna do everything possible with that name. I've gone above and beyond my expectations for the past couple months, by the way, guys, in that sub count, which is really cool. I mean, I've taken hits, and a lot of it's because of gifted subs. That's just the way of things nowadays since gifted subs became a thing. There's even more fluctuation in the sub count. But it's really nice to see after being away and some mental health stuff, and then actually literally being away from the computer, to be back up around 300 and then some. It's a new record, by the way. Every single sub today is a new record for me on the sub count. I think someone's going to drop out. Floor literally just mentioned that she has internet issues. So that was so perfectly timed. The other semifinals, I guess while we're waiting, is going to be Deity versus Andromeda. So that is a TVT. Really cool. We do not see a lot of mirror matchups that are not ZVZ later on into this tournament. We usually get down to TVZs, basically, or ZVZs. But we had decent number of Protoss. We have TVT, and then we have a guaranteed TVZ best of 5 finals. I'll be taking a bit of a break. After this best of 3 concludes, just 5 minutes or so, just as a heads up. I think we are going to go ahead and die out here. Well, that doesn't sound right. Let's bring up the calculator, you guys. That's so scary. Exactly, Dodgyville. I actually think that rice, oh my god, rats and mice. Rice is really cute. Rats and mice are cute. I also think tarantulas are cute, and I would maybe own one if I didn't think owning like reptiles or fish or anything like that was kind of annoying. They require a lot of work, and I actually have a hermit crab, and I honestly don't want hermit crabs anymore, but like I'm not gonna, no one wants to take them, and I'm not gonna just let them die, obviously, and I feel bad because I'm not gonna want any more hermit crabs, so I can't get them buddies to play with, but they're actually very social creatures despite being called hermit crabs, and it's this whole thing, and I just feel bad all the time. But yeah, they're actually like a lot of work. My brother had a water dragon, and he didn't take care of that very well, and I just felt bad for that one. They're so cool. They're a lot of work. We do have something going on here in this game. QB goes for a pool first, and speaking of, she is in the top right. But not a super early pool first, more of a defensive looking one, honestly. The bottom left, as the red Zerg, it is F-Lore, and while she went for a straight up, like, obviously early pool, cheesy strategy last game, this time she goes for something a little more interesting, I guess, is maybe the right word, where she went for this gas at like 16, I believe, and then the pool, and then she will get a hatchery just as QB does here, right? But there is a strong chance that she goes for a very low drone ling all in, probably not even banelings. Yeah, because it's so hard to scout in the early game of ZVZ, especially on Lost and Found, that we do see a lot of early pools on this map. So to see both players go for like an earlier pool, more of a, you know, I don't want to say a strictly defensive setup, but yeah, defensive setup, one where you can actually get units to help you, is not surprising. That mid game, you know, you get past the overlords, you get past the 2 minutes or whatever that the early pool reveals itself. Then you get into the difficult things to scout, things that really, honestly, you basically just need to scout how many lings they have. And that's where I feel like this build can really go into quite easily. You just kind of bulk up those lings and then wait for speed to kick in, and then boom, you're Gucci. This is going to be with a Baneling Nest. She did continue to build, take gas from the gas geyser, and this is, as I was predicting, like one of those low drone count all-ins. So QB has the capabilities of making lings and making 2 queens at a time and all that jazz, but is she going to actually do that? You know, you can't just keep on making lings throughout the game. That's called all-inning. You know, you keep making lings and don't do anything with them, you're gonna fall behind in the macro game. If that's where this was going, but it's definitely not. Fleur is continue making lings and then waiting for that right time to send them out. Now, she is going to mess up here. She is going to reveal how many lings she has, and that was not ideal. Basically, you want to show that you have your own 4 lings. Hell, you could even show that you have 6 lings, but that's only to keep up appearances and make sure they don't scout really, truly how many lings you have. So that was a very good scout by QB, but QB is going to have to react pretty perfectly to this. So blocking the ramp with the queens is a good thing to do. There we go. I was going to say, lings won't hold. Bailiness is on the way, but it is targetable. It is surroundable. Is that a word? And that's a little scary. Spinecrawler is being put in a very nice location. I actually really like that Spinecrawler. You could also put it up here, and it still helps out with the attack, but... Actually, maybe I would have preferred it up here. I don't know. The point is it's gonna live, alright? So the point I was trying to make is that it's not out here. QB's no dummy. That would have been easily surrounded. So she has her own Banelings. Wait. Oh yeah, because the Banelings is targeted. I was tripping out, man. So just in time, make her own Banelings. Nicely done. Fleur was probably hoping she would get the little victory there, and if she had got the Banelings before any were made, I basically guarantee that she would be already pushing in, trying to win the game. Unfortunately, as she tries to push in now, things don't quite go her way. Instantly 9 drones on the board, but she's already ahead by 4, so that's going to put her substantially far ahead. QB is going to have to wait for the ability to make more Banelings. That's a guaranteed couple of seconds that Fleur has before she has to even worry about being countered. And then on top of that, even if she was countered, oh, took a bad Baneling hit right there. Even if she was countered, she has all of the defensive capabilities that QB just did right then and there. She has Queen, she has Lings with speed, and she has a Baneling nest, but she actually needs to make some Lings. She needs to get a wall up, actually, because she made so many drones. She didn't have enough larva or minerals for Lings. She had to actually have Lings right now, already building Banelings, and she doesn't, so the wall is absolutely a necessity. Most of her Lings had died over here. The best thing she can do with them now is build Banelings and try and get a couple of cheeky hits on the natural that is rather well saturated, so they would be pretty good hits, but all is on this attack by QB. She's putting a lot of Banelings into this. It's a lot of minerals and gas. Is it actually going to work? I mean, Fleur with the absolutely right call, building the evolution chambers. They're now healthy, very, very healthy, and queens tank a lot of Banelings. So it's not like you can really use the Banelings on the queen unless it's already low, which is what's happening here. She's getting very low from the Ling attack. Double wall is going to come down here. Banelings prepare to take care of those Lings once the queen dies. Self-detonation actually does not hit as QB with a really nice micro. 2 Banelings from behind. They're going to look for the Banelings, and they do trade out rather nicely, taking, I want to think, 4 from QB. That was a nice trade there. QB going to finally go back into her own droning, is going to get ahead of Fleur finally. She caused a very strong reaction, a necessary reaction, sure, but a very strong reaction from Fleur, and was able to do the ZDZ dance of, first you made me make Lings, now I make you make Lings, then you catch me making drones, I catch you making drones. Seemed like they're very evenly matched, to be honest. That was a nice call by Fleur, and if she had just made a couple of Banelings, I think she may have even been able to hold a little bit better. Unfortunately, had to waste so many of her own drones building those evolution chambers. Not even able to, you know, safely cancel these 2 in the back. She just has a ton of useless stuff, and I guess she has a secondary wall if she needs it, but... Things are looking up for QB, who initially took the damage, but third base to third base, not too different of a time here for either player. +1 on the way, a little ahead for Fleur, which QB would know about, you know, seeing how fast, how on top of she was of the Wiggly Jiggly. But Lair's on the way now. Fleur with a faster Lair, faster +1, seems to be setting herself up better for the Roach follow-up, but she is a little behind on those drones. Lings are able to skirt on past here despite a Baneling going off on them. Do grab at least 1 drone, and that will be it for the harassment. It's probably going to be it for the Ling phase, mostly. Fleur making a couple more Lings, but perhaps only just to support these Banelings. This is the best Diamond play I've ever seen. Well, considering she said she was probably more of Masters. And then right after she said it, we had the physical proof of her internet dying out on her. I think we can trust that she does, in fact, lose 1 too many games that she should have won. Because her internet sucks. I used to have internet problems, man. That's like the really stupid thing, especially living in America. Actually, in a lot of countries, I won't even say just America. A lot of countries, but it's, you know, definitely America too. Is that you can get like a pretty damn good PC for like an okay amount of money, but there's literally some places where you can't You literally cannot pay someone to give you better internet. And you can pay someone to give you better speeds, but then you literally cannot do anything about the, you know, how fragile the internet is. It just, you know, breaks every time a slight wind happens. Like, that's so stupid. So stupid. And I used to have that when I was younger. I was a healer for World of Warcraft. And then I was a tank, but when I was a healer, I had really bad internet. There's a couple of banelings in here. And it was great until it dropped. So I'd be like healing and like doing a bunch of stuff during a boss fight, and then I just simply drop and everyone would wipe. That happened a lot. Surveillance mode and around third? That's an interesting choice. This is an important scout. So, well, surveillance mode is kind of funny because it's targetable by that queen. It is an important scout to see how many drones are at the third. It's at, you know, at this point, you could see that maybe you could see both evolution chambers wiggling and kind of figure out that it's going into like a real macro game. But third base saturation also is a signifier of what type of attack they could be going for. And in this case, both of them are really rather well saturated. Both fourth bases being planted down. Tunneling Claws. Nope, sorry, that's Surge Speed. My bad. Burrow is finishing though, and I think Tunneling Claws will be on the way. But if tit for tat, it goes better for QB. 7 drones go down for Elflor, putting her down to 47 drones to 59. She does have the much faster +2 Carapace upgrade, though. We'll see if that ends up affecting the game. This Burrow is not going along with Tunneling Claws, and that is... I mean, it's 100-100. Maybe you could really make a case that it's worth just having in general to heal up roaches, but you almost always see it paired up with Tunneling Claws. Tunneling Claws is such a valuable upgrade in ZVZ. It's insanely valuable, and that's one of the reasons that they decided to tweak it for the new balance patch. I'm really surprised to see Elflor actually just move in here. Really not a lot of evaluation went into that. She just jumped on top of a Ravager, which is an okay snipe, but then stuck around way longer than she should have. She was, in fact, down in supply. She did not have any particular upgrade leads, and that was just... Oh, it ended up being a bad call. Now she's forced to retreat and hope that the concave of her own roaches is going to be scary enough that QB decides not to push in, because while she's getting back up on that army supply, it's all on the way coming from a couple of different hatcheries. The upgrade is in favor of Elflor for this time, as +2 finishes for QB. But then the +2 Carapace could kick in during this engagement. It's like 30 seconds to go, but QB might just try and patrol around here. Certainly distracting Elflor as she sends some roaches in. Doesn't actually find too many drones because there simply weren't any there. But uh-oh. Elflor does not have an Overlord, seeing that the army had moved past here. QB has 10 more army supply. The upgrades are currently even. +2 Carapace is not kicked in, but the surround might be too good. QB is surrounded for the most part, jumped upon. Looks like some of the Ravagers were focus fired. Crucible is coming down for both players every which way. And who is going to have actually... the winning fight here? It looks like it is, in fact, going to be Elflor. It's a little too powerful with that surround. +2 Carapace finally kicks in. She's going to be able to actually tag some of these last few Ravagers and be able to get the last hits just barely. Now, continuing the push, she's going to go for the counter. It's hard to tell exactly how much bank your opponent has in ZVZ. The QB did have a bit of a bigger one with a larger army supply, or drone supply, sorry. But she took a rather bad fight and is struggling to get to even. She does barely manage to make it and is now the one running after those expensive Ravagers, taking them out, and the back and forth does continue. Some roaches find their way into the fourth base once again, so a couple of drones go down, but Elflor had built herself back up to a decent count. I don't think that's the end of the world. This could be, though, as she's found trying to retreat back to her natural instead of her third. A lot of the roaches go down, the Ravagers go down. Tunneling Claws is finished for both parties, basically, at this point. But Elflor is the only one with that +2 Carapace. Things are looking a little scary once again for Elflor. Have they both recognized they have Tunneling Claws? It's a graphical upgrade, but it can be really hard to remember in the heat of the moment. Elflor also a little down in that Ravager count. She doesn't have the time to make them. It also could be a decision she is making, but is it the better decision? That's the question. +2 Carapace is only going to be able to help out so much, but she pounces on top of an army that she thinks it is better or inferior to her own. But this is because a lot of the roaches going for those Tunneling Claws attack. Oh god, this game's actually pretty good, but I think it is going to go in favor of QB. This fight is going okay. The concave good for both players, but just not enough units for Floor, and QB ends up taking the macro game. GG. Scouting at the last second, that Ling all-in was absolutely huge, and forcing all those evolution chambers was also pretty big, but I actually think it was Floor being a little too overeager with her attacks that truly ended the game. She was able to repel an attack where she was a little bit weak, and then was a little bit overconfident because of it. Ended up losing too many roaches trying to retreat. I think that was the real killer. Why do you keep calling her Elf Floor? Because Elf Floor is really hard to say. For obvious reasons, Joan Lith. I feel like you're being a bit of an ass. And if you don't mean to be, then I sort of apologize. But it's actually really hard to pronounce F Floor when speaking on the fly. As Ragnarok Cat brings up, +2 armor is not commonly seen in Pro ZVZ, and I gotta figure the reason being that it's just so much better to put that minerals and gas into faster telling claws as well as more roaches. What is this? We gladly welcome our new partner, the Global Data Science Team. What? What is that about? Ooh, Dreamcatcher. I said when I first saw her name, it's gonna be really hard not to say Elflore. And I was right. Oh, god damn it. I hate when they do. People, you know, someone asks ready and then one player says ready twice, or I think what's even more egregious is when the observer, another observer says ready, and I'm like, oh, people said ready. How about E floor? What if that's a, what if that is it? I mean, it's capital E, right? So E floor. E floor. That's how I'm gonna pronounce it from here on out. In the bottom right is the red Zerg. She is E Flore. In the top left as the blue Zerg. She is Q Ubai. Sounds about right, guys. Both of these Zerg players seeming really well matched for each other. That ZVZ Roach War decided a lot by decision making, which is, you know, one of the reasons we really love watching the pros play, besides just general goodness, right? Is that we don't often have to talk about mechanics. Sure, you'll bring it up occasionally, you'll point out a supply block, or you'll just recognize how dominating a player is in a macro game and be like, it must, you know, their macro is probably just a little bit better here and there. But it's like, often not the point of the play, right? We talk about build orders, you talk about decision making, you talk about micro. So you don't have to constantly just be like, well, they could win if their macro doesn't suck. Which, to be honest, you kind of have to point out when you're casting, you know, people that aren't pros. So that was really fun. That was 99% I felt the decision making. I'm sure there is a ton, there were macro and micro mistakes in that game, for sure. You know, we saw a couple of supply blocks. We saw some bad detonations with the banelings type deal. And we did see probably times when they should have been droning a little bit faster versus times when they aren't pros, right? But a lot of it was decision making, and a lot of it was just like, who is the smarter ZBZ player? And that's fun to watch. We do have, once again, Outfloor going for the early speeds. She might try to do the same all-in again and just be a bit better about hiding it. She definitely was the one that kind of screwed up. She was the one that intended to do the all-in. It was kind of on... It was her prerogative to go ahead and hide that all-in, and then she was unable to do so because she simply didn't want to have 4 lings shown and thought she could get away with it, basically. No, she didn't. If she does it this time correctly, then it's very possible that she gets that surprise that she would want. Now 4 lings are being made, but 4 more lings are being made, right? For F-Floor, and that's alongside a Baneling Nest, which is the real telltale sign if QB was able to get in there. In fact, I think she could get in there if she divvied off 2 lings and just tried to run past. I'm pretty sure it would work. And at the very least, she would see that there are 4 lings once again hidden in the main. Any lings at all hidden in the main is suspicious enough, basically. You're gonna get pronounced Anjo Meat. Oh no, I'll really massacre that one, trust me. I think it's K-U-B. That's pretty good. So if you don't see it with the lings, then the first thing you see it with is the Overlord, and that's still a decent amount of time on a map like Dreamcatcher, but the unfortunate thing about Dreamcatcher is that you don't have an easily wallable off. Yeah, I said it that way, don't judge me. Natural, so it's not like you can build a bunch of evolution chambers. Your best bet is always to go for the queens on the main, and then, if possible, you also put your lings in front, or even some drones in front of your queens. QB, oh man, she wasn't the full last game, but I guess in the heat of the moment, she did build a spine crawl that was easily surrounded. Baneling is once again also easily surrounded. Still, not in time to stop any Baneling production whatsoever, but those are 2 pretty big losses, and now the hatchery is in fact in danger. So 4 Banelings are here. That actually was okay, Micro, there we go. Just had to go back in and trade out. 1 Baneling does not kill Banelings of your opponents, so not the explosion that QB was looking for. And F-Lore has a ton more Banelings on the way. QB's just now getting back to building her own Baneling Nest. She probably used all of her gas on building the Banelings that she did make. And this is not looking so good for our Blue Zerg. For one of our defending champions as well, as her hatchery gets very low though, she's actually manages to save it just because she has so many lings. So that actually very quickly turns. F-Lore... She was droning, that's what. Okay, I was like, there is this weird thing that happens, right, where you just... There's this huge gap where momentum really does stop. And if F-Lore wasn't droning or was still continuing to flood with lings, this could still be something that looked very dangerous for QB. But it looks like she started to drone up, and she also took a bit of damage from a run-by from QB, so that's also why QB was having difficulty defending, was that she made that choice to send some across the map. They ended up killing 5 drones though, so it was certainly worth it because she was also able to defend her hatchery, which was the big question mark. And as such, with everything considered now, the game does continue on a relatively even state. As I said, both of them seem very well matched. 4 Banelings on the defensive, 4 Banelings soon to be on the defensive as they waddle back home. 3 Banelings, sorry. Looks like that should not go down. There's, no, I was gonna say, that hatchery's little too high health, and there's a transfusion away from that 1 queen too. But 2 drones go down, and that's something right there. Almost 3 go down before QB's lings get back for this round. So F-Lore now taking the lead is gonna transfer over into, I mean, I know this seems like a very long best of because we had that, you know, almost 15-minute break where F-Flore's internet wasn't working, but in the first game between these 2, we saw F-Lore really take a very dramatically greedy path to the follow-up. This time, it's more of what you would expect with a Roach wall-off. Unfortunately, not quite in time to deal with the Lings. She does have a decent number of Banelings, so this should be cleaned up. Not the most effective trades from those Banelings there, but as long as she cleans it up at all. Elflor does still have the Overlords on her opponent's side of the map to see if there's any more on the way, and she sees that there is not. Deals with the one hidden Baneling that was going to try and be tricky, and will eventually, finally, deal with these Lings. But while Elflor does not see any more Lings on the way with this Overlord, she does see a substantially faster third base. And unfortunately, that is just faster than her. Not really any reason being besides that she was a little down in drones for a while and that she had to deal with those Lings. So they both are now transferred over into Roaches and +1. Elflor is at least ahead on that. She is pretty far behind on that third base. That +1 lead isn't going to be too substantial, I don't think. I doubt it. We should be seeing a lair very soon for Elflor. QB's is already on the way. Choosing to go for the weaker hatchery to give it a little bit more of a health bump. Third base is under fire by quite a few Lings. Not quite done with the Ling Baneling phase, but we're almost. Nice little split there from Elflor. Leaving one perfect little Baneling to help deal with these Lings. Uh-oh. Oh my god! Oh my god! Well, that... that was a manual detonation, I think, so... Whew. Whew. That would have potentially caused us... Potentially? I added an N in there for no reason. Potentially. Potentially. Potentially caused the third base to be cancelled, but there's a lot of Lings on the way. These Lings, not so much going for a run by as they are more of a scout, honestly. Although, hey, almost got 2 drones. Now going into the natural, seeing the lair, knowing that there is a lair does take away the idea that there's an all-in on the way. But does also reveal that it's much faster than Elflor's. I feel like, though, when you're thinking of things to kind of give up because you're in a bit of a tricky spot, I feel like giving up a very fast lair timing, or should I say an appropriate lair timing, is very doable. Not gonna try and sell you that roach speed isn't valuable, but when you're on the defensive, it's a little less valuable than keeping up on the drones or making sure that +1 missile is well timed. Two Banelings not seen. Elflor is very good about having Overlords on her opponent's side of the map. She, in both this game and the last game, was not so great about having her Overlords on her own side of the map, on the defensive. And that could end up really hurting her. Like, specifically, this Overlord should be over here, seeing the Banelings walk in. There are 2 queens. Okay, they're good enough. They killed one, that's good enough. Only 1 drone died in that process. There are Roaches and Ravagers going across the map, but even odd... This is actually a very odd thing to see from someone who didn't go for the fast Roach speed. Who knows her opponent is going to have the Roach speed as well, because she saw the lair timing. That is not something you would expect from Elflor, and I guess she figured she would have the same, or roughly the same army, maybe even a better army if she had, like, more Ravagers, which got kind of ahead of themselves there and died. And that, you know, she wouldn't be forced to retreat. That was a very bold thing for her to do. So, luckily for her, she is not chased down. I think specifically the Ravager would have been under fire, but yeah. Speaking of Roach speed, hey, where is it? Hope she doesn't forget it. Maybe she did forget it. She also didn't see these 2 Banelings. QB's looking a bit better in the macro game here. Even 4th bases, even drones, basically, but with a faster +1 Carapace, Helling Claws, Burrow, even a Spinecrawler to help out with the defense. Starting to get really up there in the army supply. Seems like Elflor's worst problem, her real problem here, is her larva injects. Finally seeing a very big discrepancy in the mid to late game of the ZVZers. 7 drones also went down to those Banelings finally waddling in. Elflor's own Baneling's not able to protect her. Another supply block coming in as well, so larva problem, supply block problem. QB just simply has a very superior army but perhaps not trusting what she's about to scout. Actually, not really scouting the army, I guess. It's once again, F-Lore is going to move out here, but not really called for. And she did, at this point in time, officially forget speed. So just simply not noticing how much slower her roaches are than they usually would be around 11 minutes. I think QB is going to be able to take her, well, take a stab at the crown again anyways in the finals. Keep controlling that scouting overlord. Forces F-Lore to actually kill her own. That's oop the daisy. +1 Caper is finally on the way for our red Zerg, but already done for QB, who decides to push in, kills the third base right off the, like, just simply no problem. Easy peasy. 2 drones went down, so I guess at least they were saved, but maybe temporarily. QB does have Telling Claws, now up almost 60 army supply. This is going to be a very easy fight, and QB does prove herself to be the better Zerg here, despite the difficult game number 1 and the very close game number 2. Game number 3 didn't really hold up as it became more and more evident QB just has a better macro. GG. QB will advance on to the grand finals, which she'll face off against a Terran. Not usually who she faces. It's either going to be